Welcome to Queens of Moxie, a podcast all about empowering women. I'm Mary Kay Campbell, and I'm your host. I found that when I reached midlife, I was feeling discontent, a little lost, overwhelmed, not finding the joy and peace that I always wanted. And when I talked to other women, I found out that we were all in the same boat, facing empty nests, aging parents, dissatisfaction with our jobs. So that's what Queens of Moxie is all about. I interview women who have come out on the other side triumphant, and their stories will inspire you, give you hope, and you'll enjoy it. So let's get started. We're here today at Queens of Moxie podcast with Morgan Adams. And Morgan, I am just delighted to have you here today. What you're doing is both fascinating and so incredibly important for people. And before we get into the mix of it, I would like to give a little bit of background about you and what you're doing. And then today we're really going to focus on the changes you made in your life and why you did that. So just to give everybody a little bit of background, you have your undergraduate degree from Mary Washington, both in psychology and women's studies, and then your master's in social work from BCU. And what people may not realize about you is that you have really spent your entire career in the wellness space, whether it was social work or pharmaceutical sales, public health, healthcare marketing. And about a year ago, you started Morgan Adams Wellness, which is really about helping people to get the proper sleep that they need. So it's sleep hygiene and sleep health. And so I think it's a fascinating area of study. And I'm sure you're going to give us, a couple insights about that. But again, today we're really focusing on how you made some shifts in your life and why you did that. So welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me come chat with you, Mary Kay. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you talked with you and I talked before we got started today, a little bit about how you started in social work. And, as many people probably know, that is a difficult field to have a sustainable income in, unfortunately. But you have this commitment and this dedication to really helping other people. And I get the sense that has come through in every aspect of your life. So can you give us just a little bit of a window into why you feel that way and what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always really enjoyed the mental health helping profession and wasn't able to fully tap into that in a sales capacity because, you have a lot of structure and parameters. But, I think that what really was the turning point in my wanting to help other people with their health was just having to deal with my own breast cancer diagnoses. I had two, one in 2018 and one last year in 2021. And so I feel like those experiences were sort of the launching pad for me to really start sharing more about how to help people get healthier. That was kind of a turning point. And doing them kind of on my own terms rather than really attaching myself to a company, so to speak.
So can you tell us a little bit more about what having that diagnosis, not just once, but twice, and overcoming it has, like, what did that do for you from a psychological perspective? We're at this point in our life where we've poured into everybody else and everything else, and often we don't take time for ourselves. And unfortunately, sometimes it's a traumatic event. For me, it was a car accident. For you, it was a cancer diagnosis that for me made me stop and assess what I was doing and where I was going and what I wanted to do. Can you talk a little bit about that in your journey?
Yeah, well, I think, there are a couple of major takeaways that I learned from that. Number one is advocating for myself and my health. In my particular breast cancer story, I had to really, really press the medical establishment to keep giving me more tests to really get to the diagnosis. So I had to be, to use my voice in a way that I'd never actually used it before. Another lesson that I took away from all of this was we sometimes tend to over focus on the minutia and, get upset about something kind of trivial. And I think you can relate to this is you really get some perspective when your life is being threatened, and you have a serious illness or an accident in your case, and you begin to really understand what is important, what your priorities are. You begin to really understand also who your friends are as well. I had some experience with closer friends kind of ghosting during the cancer process, which I was really, taken aback by. Yet on the other hand, I had some people who were acquaintances I didn't know that well, really just reach out and say, how can I help you? So you really begin to understand who's important in your life. So yeah, there were some major takeaways from that. And also just in general, prioritizing my health. I made some serious changes in my patterns and habits that I still have maintained as a result of the cancer. So it's been quite a journey for sure.
Yeah. So I want to go back to two of the things you said. The first one is you started to really prioritize what's important and what's not. So give us a sense of what you stopped and said, yes, this is important and stays on my plate, and nope, it's gone.
Well, I think I got really dialed into social stuff. For example, people who I perhaps didn't really feel like I had a super close connection with. Um, I would sort of try to maybe dial back on socializing with them versus, just I think I had the tendency to just, if somebody asked me to do something with them, like go out to lunch or whatever, I would just do it because to be nice. And I had to really become more of a curator of my friendships, and not in a unkind way, but just really figuring out I wanted to keep my circle kind of tight.
Right.
I think that was kind of a lesson in that.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. And my second question is, what changes did you make from a health perspective, in reclaiming reclaiming yourself, reclaiming your health?
Well, I was always considered to be, one of the healthy people. You could see me, like at a salad bar, and you could see me at yoga class, but it was really honestly the things that were driving me to be healthy, quote unquote, I use that loosely. They were actually things that were to help my appearance, right? To
Um,
stay thin. So I would, for example, not to pick on this brand, but like there was there it's still out there. I saw it the other day on the shelf. Um, Something called Halo Top. Halo
mhm.
type top. It's like a fake ice cream. I would eat one of those because it was low calorie, right? Um, but I didn't really. I was just looking at calories. I wasn't looking at actually what was in the food itself. Like if you look at the ingredients, it's just a list of things you can't actually even pronounce.
Right.
So my health was kind of driven by more of the vanity aspect of being healthy. Being thin is mainly the driver. I had some, sort of eating disordered tendencies growing up and into my 30s. Um,
Mm.
One thing that I changed how much I drank. I was over drinking wine. And, I didn't realize how much of an issue it was at the time, because when you're surrounded by people who are consuming what you're consuming, you don't question it. But when I really step back and I look at the consumption, I was probably having like 12 glasses of wine a week, which
Mm.
like spread out over the week it wasn't like,
Right.
a six pack a day. But I've learned through this journey that technically like 7 drinks in a week for a woman is considered heavy drinking. So technically I was a heavy drinker, yet you would never look at me like in a situation, even at, a social situation. I wasn't like sloppy, falling over myself and being crazy. um, that was a big change, because just to back up, with my particular cancer, it was estrogen driven, and drinking alcohol raises your estrogen. So it was a pretty big, it was a pretty big factor, I think, in my cancer. So I, really made some changes in reducing the alcohol. Another huge change I made was going in the direction of cleaner, non-toxic products.
Right.
I started with skincare and makeup. I was actually with a wellness and skincare company at the time. I won't name the name, but when I got my diagnosis, I started to look at the ingredients on everything I was putting on my skin. And I was really shocked when I learned that the products that I was selling, a couple of the products, didn't really meet the specifications of like being clean enough for me. And so I made the decision to leave the company, which was hard because I'd already built a pretty substantial business. And I joined a company called Beauty Counter, which is a clean beauty company. And I was very, very into working with them for a few years. I'm still technically with them, but I'm not like out there promoting, but I still use, clean products. And I definitely believe in making the switches when you can. I mean, when I'm talking to people about cleaner things, it's really more about sustainable choices over time. It's not feasible for most people to do an overhaul. So it's just like when you run out of your laundry detergent that might be, full of bad chemicals, maybe replace it with something cleaner, or just, look into water filters, or there's just dryer balls are, much cleaner than a dryer sheet. So it's just the little things add up. So that was a huge change. Those were the main changes I made from a health perspective that have stuck and continue to evolve.
So now you're healthy. You have launched this new business. You're really focusing on being clean and eliminating as many chemicals in your life as you can. What has that done for you from a psychological perspective, and really, owning who you are right now?
I think it's been incredibly empowering. I really kind of went the, I guess, less traditional route during my cancer diagnosis the first time. I chose to go to a clinic in Cancun, Mexico for 3 weeks that does more integrative therapies, things that are not really considered standard of care in the US. And I got a little bit of heat from a few people for doing that. People didn't understand, but I think, the reality is that with my own personal situation, I saw both of my parents deal with cancer. They both passed away from cancer, and they both actually got traditional cancer treatments. And so in my mind, I came at it from a biased perspective. I saw what it did to them, and I just immediately thought the same thing's going to happen to me. So I immediately kind of put my hands out like this, like I don't want to go down that route. Ultimately, I ended up, though, kind of embracing the more traditional, conventional treatments with a lumpectomy, and then 3 years later, a subsequent double mastectomy. So I've kind of like seen all the different paths you can take, and I'm really grateful that I got to integrate them both and see, the best parts of both. So I would say that the experience was very empowering because I was very deliberate in making sure I made the decisions that felt right for me, and not feeling like I was being pushed into a system that I didn't really want to be in at a certain point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think so often um, we go through life and we just kind of go through it, and it is critical that we really claim that power, and say, this is what's okay for me, this is what's not okay for me. Setting those boundaries. You talked earlier about being your own advocate, and that you had to really advocate to get the tests that you needed in order to be diagnosed. So you knew something was going on, and you wanted to continue finding answers until you were satisfied that you had all the answers. And I think it's very important for women to understand that you are your biggest advocate, and it is critical. And in your case, it led to the diagnosis that, if you had not been as uh, assertive with your requests for testing, you may be in a very different situation now than you are. And so, if nothing else, encouraging women to be their own advocates, to continue to ask questions, and I love the fact that you did look at and utilize different modalities for the treatment, so that you knew you were doing what was best for you and your situation, and that you were flexible enough to move into a space that you weren't originally comfortable with, because you knew that it was the right course of treatment for where you were and your diagnosis. And so having that flexibility and that understanding, okay, my situation has changed and now I'm moving into this space, it can be applied in any aspect of your life. So you may go into your life thinking, this is what I'm going to do. And then life changes and you have to be flexible and open to other aspects and other things that might lead you down the path you need to go down.
And another thing, kind of to piggyback on what you just said, I really think that so often in a medical scenario where there's a diagnosis, like a cancer diagnosis, I think that often the medical community is very, very insistent that we make a decision quickly. And what I learned was that, in my situation, and a lot of people's situations who have cancer, it could be a slow growing cancer, as it was in my case. And there actually isn't a sense, there's a sense of urgency to an extent, but it's not like tomorrow you must make this decision. I think that it's important for people who are being faced with a diagnosis to take a step back and do a reality check and really ask themselves, is this time critical? Like, is time critical as I'm being told? Because what that does, it can allow you more time on your end to do your research and to talk to people and to process. Because when you're in that state where you've been diagnosed with something, it's very scary. And the last thing you need to do is feel like you're being pushed and rushed. Like I really value the fact that I had the luxury of being able to do a lot of research, talk to a lot of people, so that I could make the decision that I needed to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's not just in a situation where it has to do with your health. It really is where you are in anything in your life. It's applicable, and I think that, at least for me, I have a tendency to when I hear about something that I'm concerned about or a problem, I want to fix it and I want to do it right now. And I'm definitely one of those action-oriented people. And I always value people who are able to step back, process the information, think about it from all the different angles, and make an informed decision. And my son, who just turned 20, is very much a scientist. And so he takes that latter approach, and he probably researches things more than he needs to. I'm sure that he does, but he doesn't make any decision from what tennis shoes he's going to buy to the watch he wears to, literally everything that child has researched. He's not a child, he's a young man. It's hard to get my head around that sometimes. So he, when I really have an important decision or important purchase to make, I ask him, can you help me figure this out? Because I know he's going to think about it from so many different perspectives and angles, and that adds so much depth. I may still do the same thing that I was originally going to do, but now I'm doing it from a position of knowledge rather than reaction. And I think that's a valuable lesson, whether it's your healthcare, whether it's a business decision, a relationship, a purchase, whatever it is, giving yourself that space to really process. And I always like to say, this last year and a half with my traumatic brain injury, I was forced to rest in the pause. And I think resting in that space between is so important. And I've learned the value of that. And I've learned that life doesn't stop, but it also doesn't fall apart. That I can still really take the time to think through things and make the changes or decisions that I need to make. And there is a peace that comes with having that time and space and not feeling like you've got to immediately do something. So again, I think no matter what aspect of your life you're talking about, that's a valuable thing to walk away with, is to know that you can rest in that. I also want to just ask you to give a really high level of what it is that you do with sleep coaching and why it's so important to you.
Yeah, well, the reason I started getting interested in sleep coaching is because I had my own battle with insomnia about 12 years ago or so. It was a while ago, and I relied on a prescription medication for about 8 years to help me sleep. And I luckily was able to get off of the meds. I probably didn't go about it the best way, but I did what I could at the time, and I was able to get myself off the meds. And from then on, I slept pretty decently. I mean, it was okay sleep. It wasn't like the best. And then what ended up happening is during the beginning of the pandemic, like a lot of people, my sleep started to suffer. And I got really concerned because I did not want to go back into the world of insomnia. So
Right.
I started to really optimize my sleep. I got an Aura ring, which is the sleep tracker you wear on your finger, like a ring. And I would do these experiments and keep tabs on my scores, just as being very proactive like I am. And I started figuring out little tricks and tips, and I started just sharing them organically on social media. And I started finding out that like a lot of my friends were having trouble sleeping. And so probably it was about 2 summers ago that I had this revelation, um, that I wanted to be a sleep coach for women, and I wanted to do it to be a holistic sleep coach for women, because what I want to do and what I'm doing now is really looking at the sleep problem from a holistic perspective. So when I meet with a client, we do a deep dive into their medical history and their sleep, and I'm kind of like a sleep detective. I'm asking lots and lots of questions, and um, I'm I'm helping these women get better sleep through just a very diverse combination of things, depending on their own situation. Sometimes we're looking at their diet. Sometimes we're looking at movement. We're very, very often looking at their chronotype. In other words, are you a night owl? Are you a morning lark? And how do we craft your schedule to match your chronotype so that you can sleep better? I'm really discovering lately that the root cause of so many people's insomnia for women, which is my demographic, is anxiety. So I'm able to help women from the perspective of creating a mindset that makes sleep more natural, more easily accessible to them. And I'm finding that as I go through this process, building this business, women who are on sleep medications or over the counter products are coming to me because I'm very open about my story on my website. I share all that about that. I go kind of a little bit deeper into the sleep med problem. And so I think they look to me as, she did it. Like, I know it can be done. I want her to lead me down that path. Um,
Right.
so it's been really, really fun to dig in there and really help women on a very profound level with their health. Um, and so I'm just really enjoying that process a lot.
Yeah. Well, and what I think is so wonderful is you have taken a number of different things in your life and looked at them and said, okay, I want to make this better. So you looked at your cancer diagnosis and figured out the right approaches for you. You looked at health and wellness and figured out the right approaches for you. And now you took a situation where you'd had insomnia, you've been on medication, you got yourself off of it, and now you were starting to face those same issues. And instead of just saying, okay, I'm going to get on medication again, you found ways through your own research and trial and error to fix that. And I think that as women, we have the opportunity to look at our lives and go, okay, this is working, this isn't working, this is what I want to do. And and it kind of helped you to define your why, and your why is to help other women with this situation to come out in a healthier, more balanced way. And defining your why, defining who you are, what's at your core, and then going after it and making the changes in your life to accomplish that is what Queens of Moxie is all about. And so I love the fact that you've done this really throughout your life, and now you've kind of found your sweet spot, which is it's exciting, you know.
Yeah, it's coming together. I'm 52, and I started this business when I was 51, right as I got diagnosed with the second cancer. And I feel like I'm just starting. Like it's kind of exciting to think that I have like I don't like when people talk about retirement, you hear a lot about your retirement plan, and I'm like, I don't see myself retiring. Like I love what I do so much that I just want to keep doing it till I'm no longer able to do it. So I
Yeah.
feel like I've got a long, long road ahead of me in this field of wellness and health, and excited to just to me it's really gratifying to help women in midlife, because we're dealing with a lot of new things that we haven't dealt with before. And if we have a long lifespan, we could potentially spend you know up to half of our life in postmenopause. That's just kind of
Right.
mind blowing.
Yes.
So we have a lot of life left, a lot of things to do, a lot to accomplish.
Right. Right. And I can remember before I just turned 50 last month, and before I turned 50, when